When you're working with people, what are some of the first questions you ask?
That's a great question. The obvious ones, where do you want to be in 30 days from now? What have you been struggling with for the last 3 months that you'd like to make a change? Like, what does better look like? That's the one I come back to. There's actually two questions that I ask more than any others. And it's, what does better look like? The reason being, we get so confused with what does more look like and what does better look like because we're so driven by scarcity. And then the other one is, if I was going to be dropped into your experience, I could feel everything you felt, saw everything you saw. I could think everything you thought and feel everything emotionally that you felt. What would I notice? And the reason I'm asking that is because it guides them to a more self-reflective place, and it encourages them to put words to their experience. And that's typically something that we don't articulate that well.
Go back to better. You said better rather than more. Explain why.
Yeah, so a lot of the people that I work with are business owners. They're seeking freedom, and there's a game that we can play that is easily quantifiable, which is revenue, which is client served, which is the churn number. There's so many numbers that people track, cost per lead. And it's easy to gamify your life and think, well, if I reduce my cost per lead by 5%, then that's going to increase my satisfaction somehow. But I've worked with a few people who have got trapped in the pursuit of more. It's odds with the what does Greg McKeown call it? The relentless pursuit of less but better. I love that phrase. And so they get trapped in this pursuit of more, and eventually they end up ripping their life apart because, and usually after they've worked with me, not during, because they've realized they can do more, and they realize they can grow and they can create this empire, but they breeze past the point of enough and keep on playing the game more. Whereas there's the game of better that we can play. And sometimes that can look like getting rid of half your clients. Sometimes it can look like moving to the middle of nowhere. Sometimes it can look like choosing to work 3 hours per day instead of 12. So better is what we're looking for. And it's a subjective thing. It's entirely personal.
What stops people or limits people making those changes?
3 things. Their physiology. So what state is your nervous system in? Is it wired to approach challenge in a way that you can explore and be creative and feel safe? Or is it either going to shut down or freak out into fight or flight? That's number 1. Second is a lack of clarity of the self. So we've got stories that are obscuring our vision of reality. We've got a goal or a direction that we're trying to travel in that is either misaligned or inaccurate to what we authentically want. And then because of those 2 things, the path is unclear too. So the second piece is clarity. And then the third piece is a lack of character. And character is, who are you becoming? Are you becoming the person you're meant to be? And this is basically applied philosophy. So we could use Stoicism, we could use Nietzsche. Those are 2 pretty good starting places for how do we train your character? Because character is essentially made up of a set of skills. Like when I was talking about that idea of walking that ridge line and with the drops off, one of the conversations I had with myself was, who do you want to be? And I've articulated that to myself so many times. I think I've got a pretty good idea now of who I want to be, the courage associated with that, the discipline associated with it, the fact that I love guiding others, whether that's physically or emotionally. So when I ask myself, who do I want to be, there's a clear image of it, and that's built up of character skills, just like in FIFA. In FIFA, there's passing 90, shooting 93. I see us and our clients and myself through this lens of, okay, there's this image somewhere in our mind. The Germans call it Hintergedanke, a thought in the back of your head that that you have. And can you articulate that more clearly, and can you aim at it?
Nice. I love this idea of building character. It's something that I've tried really hard as a young kind of 20-year-old, and Jordan Peterson had a lot of really nice ideas for me years before. Maybe you've heard of the understand myself type idea. One issue that I would love to ask your opinion on for myself was when I was plotting out that who do I want to be, I felt that my ideals were not congruent with the reality. So I think this is maybe where a lot of people get stuck. It's the ideal is what we can relate to, what we compare to the things that are most attractive in our vicinity. But what is reality is maybe what we're predisposed to. So these kind of innate skills that you talk about, each one of us has different innate qualities. How do you work with people to balance out the, let's call it, idealistic character compared to the realistic character? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think I know where you're getting at. One of the things I'm constantly trying to guide people towards is a less annoying version of authenticity, because there's this kind of like this Instagram version of authenticity that just means be whoever you find easiest to be, and that isn't authenticity. Authenticity is be who you're meant to be. And so again, we have that kind of inbuilt version of that, and there's all these ways that we could grow, but there's only certain directions that appeal to us. So I teach this concept called nested goals, and it's basically the connection between our purpose and our character. So running through our vision and our values and our goals and our process to get there. So like basically that channel blows from or that wind blows from the direction of authenticity. If you are misaligned in elements of that, you will struggle, because you're working towards someone else's goals, you're building towards someone else's purpose, you are channeling someone else's process, you're doing someone else's work, you're trying to be someone else. But you know who you are meant to be. There's a version of you that you're meant to be. And a classic example of this in business is, are you an empire builder or a craftsman? I tried to be an empire builder for years. I was thinking about scaling the whole time. I was thinking about, can I maximize these percentages? Can I push? Can I build? And I got to the point where I was kind of doing it. I was like, why? It's making me so miserable to try and build this business. I'm not really getting where I want, and it always feels like running in treacle. There's resistance to it. Whereas the more I follow the path of a craftsman and I hone my craft of coaching and my knowledge, and yes, there's a bit of business associated with it too, but the more I do that, the more authentic to me it feels. And you find this place of effortless effort. And effortless effort is like when you find a workout that is great for you, you don't have to force yourself to do it or to work hard. You just do it. Like whether that depends on the sport you're playing or whatever. But what I'm saying is we often use the idea of willpower like it's a generative engine. It's like, I've got to have more willpower to force myself to do this thing. And there's a very David Goggins mode of willpower. It's like, I'm going to force myself. And we think about it like the outboard motor on a boat. But it's more like the sail that we can raise. And if you remember the wind's blowing from the direction of authenticity, the sail then becomes, oh, I'm just going to direct that. And I'm just going to channel where it's coming from. And that's going to guide me to the thing that I'm meant to be doing, not someone else's version of success.
How do you help people find the initial place of authenticity? What kinds of things do you allow them to do that help them almost ground in themselves?
So we start with that question, what does better look like? And usually they'll say something like, well, it's not doing 10 sales calls today, like, so it's stopping that, or something like that, or there's things that they hate. So it's pretty easy to get rid of the things you hate. And that's, we usually come up against guilt and things, but we can navigate that as we go through it because I've tried it before. And then it's, can we pay attention to what brings you joy? And this is just emotional intelligence, emotional literacy as well. Like, what are the emotions that you're paying attention to? And like, are you able to recognize them in the moment? And if they can do that and they can identify what brings them joy, that can that can guide them, because usually we're doing what we think we should be doing as opposed to what brings us joy. And that's very different from immediate gratification. It's not Ben and Jerry's on the sofa. It's usually something much more meaningful than that. And that whole current of the nested goals is driven by meaning. Like, what do you find meaningful? And that's unique to you, and it's unique to me, and it's unique to everyone.
Mm. I feel like you have two levers. You have, on the one side, you have the friction lever. And I feel like friction is useful. It allows us to grow in certain ways. And I'm sure as a commander, you'd have felt that at times. But you also talk about effortless ease and this sense of resonance or authenticity and the wind blowing you in the direction. And it sounds very alchemist, Paulo Coelho type idea. I wonder, which lever do you pull more often?
Personally, or when I'm working with people?
Let's go personally. Let's hear more about Tom.
Personally, I have to remind myself to push the friction lever more often. I'm a bit more Dao De Jing than David Goggins, like by kind of default. So I have to encourage myself to go, okay, work on this, like to find that resistance. I think it also makes me a good coach because I'm the yin to people's yang to keep the Tao thing going. I'm able to down-regulate us and calm us and be a bit less forceful. So yeah, that's really the one that I have to go for, and to kind of create resistance. Like even things like getting up in the morning. It's like, okay, well, I am going to set 12 alarm clocks, and I am going to for going to bed and getting up to bed, because I have to create that resistance for myself, because otherwise it will just flow.
So you mean setting alarm clocks is almost like forcing yourself to get out of your own way? Yeah,
like kind of behavioral mechanisms and like kind of inputs and systems to make myself do the things that I know I should. Like systemizing things is the easiest way to gain success. If you can create a system once and then follow it, you'll sort it.
When it comes to your experience of being a commando, I project that there's probably a huge amount of friction in that experience from kind of emotional turmoil with peers and seniors, and also just the physical challenge that you have throughout that time. I wonder, can you think right now of one experience in particular that was really heavy on regarding the friction?
Yeah, the first thing that came up, and this is actually one of the reasons why I ended up leaving the Corps, because you're ultimately one of the things that's brilliant, and one of the reasons why they can create elite soldiers like a pipeline, is because they have these built-in ethos and values that you are forced to memorize, things like cheerfulness in the face of adversity and courage and humility. You're forced to memorize them, and then you're put through a training process where you're forced to embody them. And if you embody them, you will solve the challenges that you're supposed to solve, and you'll earn a green beret and some flashes on your shoulder that say Royal Marines Commando. And it's not the most IQ heavy test to do that. It's very difficult in terms of willpower to do that. And I got to the end of training and I was just burnt out. And then I kind of did a year or so of kind of trying to do as little as possible, really. I kind of hid around because I was just exhausted. And I was a reservist as well, so I could kind of do that. And then, after, I can't even remember how long it was, I was put on a PTI course, a physical training instructor course. And because I was coaching CrossFit at the time, it was the last thing that I wanted to do, to go and in my time off, do the same thing that I was doing the whole time, but just in a tiny white singlet. It wasn't really my idea of success. I was in the military to do military stuff, but you're kind of forced down that route. So there was so much personal resistance to that. And everyone's got their reasons to do it. And this is one of the reasons why I'm still not in the Corps, because I'm not the right person to be a career soldier. I personally speaking, I did it for myself, a lot of it. And I think a lot of people do, but kind of that's by the by. But I was pushing so hard against my authentic self. And I was pushing so hard against a sense of individuality and the things that I was genuinely intellectually curious about, that I was meeting resistance and it made it way harder. And I think this transfers to people thinking they should run this type of business versus that type of business, or be this type of fit versus that type of fit, or have this kind of body or this kind of mind, because we see what everyone else is doing and we seek safety and imitate them, as opposed to having the courage and the self-awareness and self-knowledge to be able to feel what's right and what's wrong for us.
It makes sense. I really feel it in the sense of the commando training, from my perception, lends itself really well to, let's say, type 1 dopamine dominant people that are maybe less inquisitive on the ins and out of certain things and just love the get in, go hard, and lean towards the friction. And it really sounds like you're maybe more in the camp that I feel like, which is more, it's nice to have that at time, but as you said, the yin side of the equation is actually really meaningful equally. And I wonder, do you feel like the commandos on whole would do better if they embraced more of that inverse, the yin side of the spectrum?